Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove and I'm joined by my transatlantic partner. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello, it's good to hear you say hello and welcome, my friend.
Yeah, it's been you starting the show for the last week, right?
It's a lot of pressure to get it right. You got to get the energy up. You don't want to peak the audio levels, but you want to get everybody nice and enthusiastic about the episode. You do it quite well.
You're right. You got to lift it up without hitting the red. Without hitting the red.
Without getting knocks on the doors from the neighbors.
Yeah. I've heard the last few shows and I've really enjoyed all of them. So yeah, great interviews this past week, Taylor. If anyone hasn't heard, please go back and listen to all of Taylor's interviews from the past week.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. The burning question was, did I get the hello and welcomes right, though?
I mean, they sounded a bit American, but apart from that, they were fine.
I was annoying my wife all day yesterday with my terrific fake Scottish accent, so I could do that.
I mean, to be fair, that's in your vows, right?
Yes, it is. just me apologizing profusely for the things she has to put up with. Yeah, that was pretty much in the vows.
All right, so on today's show, Taylor, we're going to talk some Premier League. We're going to talk Wolves Liverpool. We're going to talk Cardiff Man Utd. And we're going to talk Man City Crystal Palace. In our show notes, it's just headlined, What Happened to Man City? So I'm looking forward to that segment. We're going to talk Josh Sargent, John Brooks, and Atlanta United's new coach. So all that is ahead on the Total Soccer Show, the newly time-stamped Total Soccer Show. I'll make sure there are timestamps for people.
There we go.
But shall we lead with the Premier League leaders? That's Liverpool, who were away at Wolverhampton on Friday night, and they walked out of Molineux with a well-deserved 2-0 win. Did you watch? Did you have eyes on this?
I did not watch live. I have watched since. And I tuned in to watch it live because my schedule has been very confused and I couldn't figure out why it wasn't on television. It's because I kept thinking Thursday was Friday. So by the time Friday rolled around, I was not able to watch live, but I have since.
That's a classic Christmas/holiday period confusion, right? I've done that several times.
But I have to say my favorite aspect of this game remains in the post-match interview when Klopp was asked about what they've done so far, and he just responded, "We now have 48 points. That's really cool." It's just the way he said it was just amazing. I've never heard a coach say "Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. It's really cool."
Maybe he's wanting to dodge tactical things so that we can address them on our show.
All right, that could be. I appreciate him getting out of the way so we can get to it.
So, because we didn't talk in detail about Liverpool's 3-1 win over Manchester United, and we kind of heard about it. Some people more polite than others, but I thought now would be a good time for us to talk about Liverpool, especially because I obviously, as a Wolves fan, paid very close attention to this game. There won't be too much to say about Wolves because this game was all Liverpool.
It sure was, but I have quite a bit to say because I feel like a big aspect. We can get to Virgil van Dijk and Mohamed Salah, but the thing I want to talk about is Fabinho and Jordan Henderson.
Yes,
because
they're first in my notes too. Did I accidentally share my Google Doc with you? They're first in my notes as well.
You did not, but okay. Why are they first in your notes?
Well, just because they're the base of the, I want to say new, but they've been doing it for at least a month or more, right? Formation, which is no longer the 4-3-3 that you remember Liverpool playing all of last year. In this 4-2-3-1, or as Klopp, I read an interview, prefers to call it a 4-4-1-1. It's about those two. He calls them the double sixes because he's German, right? And they use that same terminology that we do in the US. The double sixes of Fabinho and Jordan Henderson. It all literally seems to revolve around those two.
It does, which is interesting because there was, I forget the minute, but there was a bit of commentary in there about questions about if the two could function together. And I was like, is that a question people had? I looked it up. There's a whole article in the Liverpool Echo all about how there's been these two factions between Fabinho fans and Henderson fans and who's going to be the one to kind of lock down that midfield.
Yeah.
And to have them play together and have it work really well. It sort of feels like the most satisfactory end to sort of, no, it's mine. It could be both. Yeah, it's both. Why not?
Yeah, because I can see in the old 4-3-3, there was a central guy, right?
Yep.
And it was Henderson for a long time, sort of doing the same role he does for England. And you could see Fabinho has the profile and the skill set to be a Henderson replacement of sorts. And so then it is sort of a battle for that central position, right? Even if they get to play alongside each other in the old shape, only one of them could have been central. Someone else would have been pushed off to the side. This way, they both can play that double six. I saw an interview with Klopp talking about how that's Fabinho's preferred position. So I think there was one eye on this when they signed Fabinho all along.
That's possible, and I think I'm inclined to say it's possible because of what Klopp has done for this team. If it's another manager, I might say like maybe that's revisionist history. It seems like it's working now, so that was definitely their plan all along. Whereas just because he seems so adept at, yes, they spend money on some players, but at getting the best out of other people and other names who maybe other people thought would be out the door by now, it just feels like another example of Jurgen Klopp sort of finding a player, fitting him into a system, adjusting the system a little bit, adjusting what he's asking of the player a little bit, and it seems like it all ends up working.
And speaking of succeeding, Fabinho was heavily involved in Liverpool's first goal against Wolves. He sort of gets tackled but keeps going after Ruben Neves has a go at him. Plays that 1-2 with Mane, I believe, gets down the right. Plays the ball, cuts the ball back across the box to Mohamed Salah, who's in the box as a centre forward. So this is the other part of the formation change to, again, what Klopp calls a 4-4-1-1, is Mohamed Salah is now the farthest forward as opposed to a right winger who can sometimes come inside. So this is how the new shape all fits together, right?
Yes, and it seemed like it fit together really well because even going back before your description of the goal, it's a free kick for Liverpool that I believe Mohamed Salah takes, and then it like ends up getting partially cleared. But as soon as he takes it, he is sprinting into the box as Firmino is kind of dropping in a little bit, and that feels sort of exactly what this is meant to be. It's Mohamed Salah wants to kind of be running with the ball at his feet, wants to be driving at the defense, wants to be putting defenders and goalkeepers under pressure. Firmino may be more content to link up play, hold up play, combine. Obviously, he still wants to score, but it just felt like this goal was a good representation of that because it is Salah. As soon as he takes that free kick and it doesn't come off, there's no like sulking or being mad at himself. He's just sprinting in there trying to be active, consistently moving, and that's why he is open when that ball comes in from Fabinho. He's also open because I rewatched this multiple times. I got over the heartbreak after like the third replay. Yeah. And was just really impressed with not just Salah's, but Liverpool forwards' movement in that sort of around that 6-yard box. Because from watching Wolves for a long time this season, they are actually very good at getting a lot of numbers between strikers and balls coming in. So it's actually quite hard to serve in crosses and like cutbacks and, corridor of uncertainty type balls. Because Wolves always have bodies and tend to get there first, especially Connor Cody. He's become very good at that. But Mohamed Salah does this thing where I think, so Wolves go right centre-back Bennett, centre-back Cody, left centre-back Bowley, right? So that's how they're faced up. Salah starts with Bennett and fakes like he's going to run in behind him, but then comes back and makes the lateral run across the front of him, but on Connor Cody's blind side. So that by the time Fabinho is cutting that ball back, Cody hasn't seen him because he sort of snuck up on him on the blind side. And at the same time, Firmino has darted into that hole where Salah would have run behind Bennett. So they've had all this really quick movement within the space of about 3 seconds that's completely confused the Wolves defence and is the reason Mohamed Salah has that bit of space that he's made for himself when he meets Fabinho's cross. Yeah, and it's all, to me, representative of like what Liverpool have in their overall team chemistry. That like if you're improvising, in soccer in this case, not like in a whose line sense, but if you're improvising and you have the belief that everybody else is kind of moving off the ball as well, that you're not the only one doing that, then there is a little bit of freedom of like, I'm sure they've drilled on runs and changing positions, but it is also an element of Mohamed Salah being like, oh, this is on, he's not aware, I'm going to pop in, I'm sure somebody else is making a different run, and it's kind of that faith in your teammates that allows you to have the confidence to make certain runs that you might otherwise not. And I think that's also true of the way that Fabinho and Henderson work together, because obviously this one, Fabinho's charging forward. I think Henderson's just sitting a little bit deeper outside the area. And I noticed they sort of took it in turns to join the attack when they had all that possession, right? So it's always one would mostly stay and the other one would go. So I think they've kind of got it down. Yeah, I mean, and it helps to have a player like Virgil van Dijk sitting behind them. You want to talk about Virgil? I do, because if they both get overcommitted, it seems like Virgil van Dijk is more than capable of covering for them and also playing all the defense. So yeah, I was really impressed by his ability to not make big dramatic slide tackles, but just to do the thing that sounds basic but is actually very hard, is just to show players to the outside. So I've got at least 2 instances burned in my memory of Raul Jimenez and also Adama Traore running at Virgil van Dijk, and he was able to just shepherd them wider and wider and wider and wider. Sometimes till he just had an angle to tackle. I think he got Jimenez a couple of times like that. But there's that one early on. I think it's a Fabinho giveaway, actually. It's one of Fabinho's sort of bad passes as he's trying to build out of the back.
And Van Dijk just forces him to a wide enough angle that I think Troy panics a bit and thinks, oh, I'll just shoot from here anyway. But it was never really on because Van Dijk had pushed him so wide. So I'm a big fan of that positional. Is that positional play? Not really, right? It's more the 1v1 defending where you don't do something dramatic. You just take control of the situation, even though the other guy's got the ball.
Yeah. So, all right, Daryl, buckle up.
Okay.
So Terminator 2
I'm wearing my Grip 6 belt, so I'm tightly buckled up.
That's good. They're not even a sponsor today. That works out well. Terminator 2 has been on TV intermittently for whatever reason, and it reminded me of how terrifying I found Robert Patrick's character, like the T-1000, I think the liquid Terminator from the second one. Uh-huh. And he is so terrifying because he is so good at being a machine that he just there's never any emotion. There's never any like anger or frustration. He's just so like cold and calculated. That is what makes Virgil van Dijk so terrifying. I never see him look like angry or stressed out or put it like he's just always just like, yeah, I'm shepherding that out of bounds.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm making this play. Yep, I'm bodying you up. And it really, and if you are a player playing against that sort of like calm, determined defensive play, it takes you out of the game. It took Romelu Lukaku out of the game against Man United. Against Wolves, it felt like every Wolves attacker who was around him just sort of felt demoralized and ended up shifting to other parts of the field.
Let me run a love run. Let me run a love run.
Exactly. And it was just how calm he is. And if you're a Liverpool player and you have this rock at the back who is just very capable in all aspects, it has to be incredibly reassuring. And then for fans, a friend of mine texted me to ask, like, I am a Liverpool fan, so I'm okay with it. But as a non-Liverpool fan, does how much the commentators praise Virgil van Dijk like bother you? And I was about to be like, no, because he's very good at what he does. And as I was responding, he scored the second goal, and my buddy texted me before I could even respond. Okay, never mind.
I mean, do you want to talk much about the second goal? It seems to me just like a nice. Is it Salah serves the ball in, and Van Dijk very gently redirects it. Yeah, so
like a machine.
Like a machine. We should have him tested.
Yeah. I mean, if he starts asking people where Eddie Furlong is, we know things are wrong.
Do you have anything else to add about this game, Taylor, before we move on to Cardiff versus Manchester United? I know all the Cardiff fans are just dying to hear about this one.
One thing that I spotted twice in this game, I checked to see if it was a thing. There's the Liverpool Reddit page. Somebody at least confirms it is. When you're watching Adam Lallana throws in a Cruyff turn at least once a game. I don't really know why. He does it all the time. Seemingly like he did it to change direction with no one around him in this game. And I was sort of like, all right, throw those Cruyff turns out, Adam Lallana. Why not?
I think that's how he turns even when he's just walking down the street. If Google Maps says take the next left, he Cruyffs.
He Cruyffs and Dele Alli Megs people at any opportunity. That's how it goes. But no, that's about all I had for this game, other than commiserations to you, my friend.
I mean, actually, so here's how great Liverpool were. Everybody, Wolves fans that I watched this with, we all agreed that Wolves played really well. And somehow lost 2-0 and just Liverpool were the better team. So it weirdly didn't hurt as much as it should have. Especially having the win over Bournemouth means we're still bouncing around in mid-table. All is good. For Liverpool...
We're literally mid-table.
Literally mid-table. Well, 10.5 would be mid-table, right?
True.
Liverpool are 4 points clear after that win, and we'll talk about Man City's loss later. I think it's worth, especially if you're maybe new to the Premier League, highlighting what's about to happen in the Premier League, what's about to go down. It's called the festive period, and what happens is, as well as playing games on Saturdays, teams will also play the day after Christmas, Boxing Day, the 26th, or on New Year's Day, or the day after. So it's about to be sort of many, many games in not very many days. So Liverpool will go away to Newcastle on the 26th, then home to Arsenal on the 29th, then away to Manchester City, that's the big one, on January 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
So you buckle up, Taylor. You buckle up.
I will, man. I will. I'm excited. This is like one of my favorite times of the year. It's the excuse to watch soccer instead of talking to people.
It's also a big part of it is you have to watch how coaches manage their teams through this period, right? Like you can't play your favoured starting 11 4 games in a row in the space of not many days. So you'll see a lot of coaches making a lot of seemingly weird but actually very sensible squad rotation moves over the next few games.
I would say you shouldn't play your starters 4 straight games in like 5 days, but that doesn't mean people don't. So that's the other aspect of it is then you get the inevitable like 3 months down the road, look back on the fixture, like on the the festive fixture period, whatever you want to call it, as like, did they rotate enough? Is that why they ended up fading down the stretch? So it's a very important time, and I am properly buckled, so don't worry, Daryl.
Well, Cardiff were not properly buckled for the visit of Manchester United under, I want to make sure I get the phrasing correct, new interim head coach.
Slash legend. Slash hero.
Legend. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Oh, yeah, so people should know Taylor is a Manchester United fan. But I actually think that's helpful in this sense because I think it gives us a good read on your newfound enthusiasm for watching Manchester United as opposed to watching because you have to.
Yep. I mean, I texted you this. I set a reminder for the kickoff. That is not a thing that I have done this season. It was also the first time this season that they really have been appointment television for me. Even the Liverpool game last week, I sort of felt like I knew how that one was going to go.
Yeah.
So I watched it, but it was the sort of like, yay, versus this one. I was ready. I wasn't going out. I told my wife, like, nope, I'm going to be here at 12:30. I'm not doing Christmas things. I'm watching this game.
I've got to watch Neil Warnock's team.
Yeah, exactly. That was what it was all about for me. I really want to see a penalty from Cardiff near the end of the first half. That's what I'm all about.
So the final score was 5-1 to Manchester United away to Cardiff. I'm going to say my two biggest takeaways from this were Manchester United's willingness to take risks, both defensively and with the ball. And by that I mean I saw a lot of centre-backs really like deep in the opposition half making tackles just to win the ball back. And I also saw a lot of Manchester United attackers making risky forward passes that, didn't always come off. But when it didn't come off, then you would be not pressing high necessarily, but stepping high to win the ball back. And when it did come off, you get sort of really exciting soccer. And it really did feel like the old days for a little bit. And I say that as a neutral, but who just enjoys watching that swashbuckling, enjoyably arrogant Manchester United style of play.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's been a bit hyperbolic in my mind, some of the reaction to this game, but it was, I think, because it was Ole Gunnar, and for people who maybe are newer to soccer, like he is a United legend, but sort of the United legend that they need in this exact moment because his career is kind of predicated upon, I'll do what you need me to do. You need me to be a super sub in 6 straight games? Fine, I'll do that. You need me to get a red card playing defensively so that they don't get a penalty? Fine, I'll do that. And so you look at him coming in as the caretaker manager, and you see why they would go that route, is to get him to have the players just sort of believe again and believe in, like, you got to do what you got to do to get the result. And so it did feel a little bit like the shackles were off. That's been the
phrase. I've somehow got annoyed with that phrase just because I've heard it so
that's what I was about to say. It's been the frustrating phrase that's been thrown around.
But what I would like us to do on this show is maybe accept that is kind of accurate, even though it's annoying, because there were like weird tactical shackles on this Manchester United team, and maybe to identify specifically a couple of them and specifically what this United team did instead against Cardiff.
All right, I'm going to start with a non-tactical but very telling thing, in my opinion.
Okay.
Is that when this game began, I mean, it doesn't hurt that Marcus Rashford scores the free kick 3 minutes in. So I don't know how much that impacts what I'm about to talk about. But so consistently what I saw, to your earlier point, it was United winning the ball back, playing it forward, and trying stuff that they haven't tried in games in recent memory. But the biggest thing for me was when those things didn't come off. Every now and then you'd still see those moments of frustration of a player gesturing or wanting the ball. But for the most part, it was thumbs up. It was like the hand of like, thank you for that ball. Like, I should have gotten to it or whatever. Yeah. But it felt like a much more, we're all in this together sort of vibe versus even the Liverpool game, it was a lot of frustrated hands in the air and it was yelling and you could see the players, like it was starting to bubble over. And so that right there was a big difference in my mind, just from like last week, everybody being very visibly frustrated with each other to everybody with thumbs up and clapping. That felt a little bit representative of the situation.
And I would say if you look back at, it's not just Mourinho, right? It's the last 2 coaches. It's Mourinho and Van Gaal. It seems to me that players have been playing with very specific instructions for things that don't come naturally, right? Yeah. So under Mourinho, there's a lot of... did you read the Ken Early Irish Times piece? Keith Costigan linked to this on Twitter. It's really good. It was about how Mourinho's style... I don't want to get too deep into Mourinho, but his recent style has been don't lose first, right? Yeah. Which includes don't lose the ball, don't make risky passes, like very nervous almost, and trying to... more focused on making sure that things don't happen to your team as opposed to making things happen to the other team, right? So, but that's been talked about at length. I don't want to go into that too much. Previously, Louis van Gaal, there was that possession thing that we talked about a lot on this show, and that's not necessarily natural to a team either, right? To just
it wasn't
almost possess for possession's sake.
Sorry, I was going to say, wasn't there that rule under Van Gaal that like you had to take like 2 touches in the box?
Yeah.
You couldn't shoot first time. You had to take 1 touch and then get the shot off.
Yeah, so all that kind of weird stuff. Like the third United goal, that the Martial goal that involves the Martial, Pogba, Lingard, Martial, and it's all 1 touch and it's in. That sort of thing really did feel like a team that was just didn't have any weird instructions that they had to abide by that they didn't really believe in. And just went out there and sort of played some attacking soccer. So,
agreed.
Two coaches worth of burdensome instructions have been sort of thrown off in favour of just go out there and attack, right? And if you lose the ball sometimes when you attack, it's fine because we'll win it back and we'll do it again. That's what it looked like to me.
The thing that I think is most like key within there's a name you mentioned very briefly, and it's Paul Pogba.
Yeah,
and he was one who I watched in this game who definitely had a good game. I think was involved in 3 of the 5 goals. But the biggest thing for me was like we still saw some of the stuff that had been really frustrating. I assume to Jose Mourinho. There were errant passes, and they were like passes that didn't quite reach where they were going, like hospital balls that allowed Cardiff to get a little bit of an attacking play. There were some weird sort of like step overs that he went for when it maybe wasn't quite on.
Yeah.
And I think that stood out to me because, again, under Mourinho, you feel like that's the stuff that he would have lost his mind on. That's the reason why Pogba wasn't starting. It's because at no point should you be trying to do 3 step overs on a guy. It should always be simple lateral passing, or it should be passing into feet. You shouldn't be trying to play into the channel on the 5% chance that Jesse Lingard gets to it. And it seemed like in this game, he was allowed to do that, but then still play within the system they were playing. So you still saw some simple 1 and 2 touch passing on occasions. You also still saw some of that Pogba winning the ball, battling somebody off of it, taking a few touches. It's the under. I wasn't even meaning to describe it, but it's the second goal, the under Herrera goal. That's what that is. It's a long ball into Pogba.
He bodies Sol Bamba, right?
He does, and then he finds that beautiful pass that like splits the midfield and defense laterally into the path of Ander Herrera to shoot. Like it's everything you want to see from Paul Pogba, and it did feel a little bit like he had been told, sort of, go do the things you need to do, and we'll build this team around you.
I also think this game was a really good illustration of, I think, the very best of Paul Pogba, right? And I'd also say, before I describe what I mean, I think there's a weird mismatch between Pogba's profile off the field and what people expect on the field, right? As in, he's a tall guy, so he's literally got a big profile, and he's kind of flashy, and he's all over social media. So people expect him to be the star of the show in almost like a Ronaldo kind of way, right? Like a couple of step overs and then a shot all the time. But I think in this game, he's much more of a facilitator, right? Even when there's a bit of flash, a bit of step overs and this and that, it's much more about being a facilitator. I mean, including the very first goal, it's Pogba that literally runs a distraction, right? He runs over the top of the ball so that Rashford can shoot it afterwards. He has the 1 touch in that move for the third goal. He has just the lateral pass for Herrera for the second goal. And I really think that's sort of like for France during the World Cup. His best role is when he's just facilitating lots of other things happening around him.
All right, here's another one for you. I would say he is like the very flashy and technically good rhythm guitarist in a band. Like that is what I genuinely feel like that's what he's meant to do. Like, yeah, he could be the lead guitarist. He's content to be the rhythm guitarist, do what he wants to do. Occasionally he'll go off and like have a riff, but for the most part, that's like he wants to kind of stay in that zone. And I do think you're absolutely right that like a lot of times you look at him and think like, oh, he is the lead guitarist. He's out there making plays and doing stuff, and he wants the highlights. And I'm sure he doesn't mind that. But I really do think, again, going to his France performances, he's all about kind of keeping it going, keeping the vibe up, doing what he needs to do, and being that role player, a very, very, very good role player, don't get me wrong. Yeah. But not that number 9 out there getting all the goals and, like then flexing in front of the camera when he scores. So
he's the lead guitarist who actually just plays chords, but then also has some surprisingly harmonic backing vocals.
The one I was going to go with, this one won't register for you, but the Dropkick Murphys, they've had like the same rhythm guitarist since they were founded, I think. And they keep, every time they lose their lead guitarist, they ask him if he wants to take over. And he's like, nope, I know what I'm doing. I am good where I am.
It's G, C, and D, right? G, C, and D.
I don't know these things. Ask my wife the musical questions. She's the one who knows how to play. Me and my fat fingers we can clap along. That's what I'm capable of doing.
Is there anything else Manchester United that you would like to talk about?
Just the only other thing off the field is I do wonder if this is another narrative. I'm not the first one to promote it or anything, but I do wonder if maybe that Liverpool game had been targeted for a while by the front office of, if this doesn't go well, then this is when we're going to make a change. Because you look at the fixtures, starting with Cardiff, it's Cardiff, Huddersfield, Bournemouth, Newcastle. I think they've got Reading in there in the FA Cup. And that does feel like the run of fixtures that if you're going to bring in a new manager, that's probably the easiest time to do it. So I do wonder if maybe the decision to sack Mourinho had been more in the works than I initially realized, especially since it's already happened. It would say that, it was probably a long time coming.
All right, and as you said, yes, Man United, home to Huddersfield on the 26th, home to Bournemouth on the 30th, and away to Newcastle on January 2nd. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, as always, his timing is excellent.
It is, and that stands out. It was, I know I'm buying into the hype a little bit. I think I texted you this. I really, really want this to work because there's just something about a former player that I love Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and to see him almost crying when he gets applauded by the fans, it means that more. So in the same way that Liverpool fans I know have the unbridled love and enthusiasm for Jurgen Klopp, it was nice to feel that about a Manchester United manager for the first time in a good long while.
Okay, so let's talk about the other team in Manchester that had a surprisingly bad weekend. They lost. Manchester City lost 3-2 to Crystal Palace at home. No one saw this coming, including, I don't know if you've seen this, Taylor, but I'm excited to share it with you. There was a Palace fan who, before the game, had said on Twitter, I just hope we win a corner kick. That was his only hope for the game. He was expecting an absolute beating, and all he hoped was that they would win a corner kick, Crystal Palace. They did not win a corner kick. It finished 13 corners to Man City, 0 corners to Crystal Palace. But the score was 3 goals to Crystal Palace to 2 for Manchester City.
It sure was. And the important lesson I learned here, and I'm wondering if Pep Guardiola has also learned it, is that John Stones is not Fernandinho. Did you know that, Daryl?
Yeah, but I don't think it's all his fault. So
Stones, I don't think it's all his fault, but I think he maybe isn't quite as capable of doing the things that Fernandinho can do.
So to give listeners the full picture here, what happened is John Stones played in that defensive midfield, Fernandinho pivot type role in midweek against, I believe, Leicester in the Carabao Cup, and apparently did really, really well. Fernandinho got injured, I think, a couple of days before this game against Crystal Palace. And so Guardiola thought, all right, it's John Stones' time to shine. Let's start him at defensive midfield. And we'll have, Otamendi and Laporte start as the centre-backs. Mm-hmm. He was weirdly involved in a couple of the Palace goals, but I still don't think it's his fault playing defensive midfield.
No, see, I guess I should have rephrased this then, because I'm not saying he's at fault for the goals, but I think so much of City's attacking fluidity is based upon what Fernandinho can do in ball retention and splitting the lines and kind of finding passes that otherwise might not be found. And
so you're saying he's
not quite as fluid.
He's at fault for the not goals.
Exactly.
And it is reflected in, I think, about the 50th minute. Guardiola made some changes. I think he took Otamendi out, put Stones back at centre-back and tried first Ilkay Gundogan in that Fernandinho role, and then later on Kevin De Bruyne, which I enjoyed watching Kevin De Bruyne in that role because he was making some things happen, including crosses that went straight in.
Yeah, in case anybody was wondering whether or not Man City still have money, the 3 players they brought off the bench were Sergio Aguero, Kevin De Bruyne, and Riyad Mahrez. So they're doing okay. They're doing okay, but they're 4 points behind Liverpool because they lost this game 3-2. I think we have to give Crystal Palace some credit here. I've got my quick tactical breakdown of what Crystal Palace did, which is essentially a 4-5-1 in what I would call a low to medium block. They weren't always camped out on top of their own area, right? They were sort of maybe halfway line to their own area. And they were I always get confused whether it's compact or narrow, but essentially the line of 4, the line of 5 and the 1 were all pretty close together in a sort of Claudio Ranieri, Leicester City style. You know what I'm saying? They never got stretched out. They stayed, the 3 lines stayed together nice and tight. And then, honestly, when your striker is Wilfried Zaha, there really is the thing of you can give it to him and he'll sometimes make something happen. And I'd argue that's what happens, or at least is part of what happens, for at least 2 of these Palace goals, right? Yep.
The first one, he runs at Laporte and sort of beats him, then gets half tackled, but then gets the ball away anyway. And the second one, I think Palace win the free kick initially because Zaha is rouletting between Kyle Walker and John Stones. So it is a thing of defend conscientiously, defend close together in a 4-5-1, then give it to Wilfred and see what happens.
But isn't it also like there was the criticism earlier in the season of the cynical fouling that City would do to break up counterattacks, right?
Yes.
And they were very much still doing that. You said in the free kick that you mentioned that leads to the second goal, I think it is Zaha basically is fouled and fouled again, and then still keeps the ball and is fouled a third time.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that I kept going back and trying to figure out, and I honestly don't have a very good answer for why City weren't able to really handle Wilfred Zaha, because at times it felt like they were trying to stand off and almost not overcommit. Then at other times it felt like they were overcommitting, and it was almost like they were doing the wrong one at the wrong time. Like they kept guessing wrong. And maybe that's just because Wilfred Zaha is so good. But to me, you're absolutely right that was the focal point of what was causing City problems, was Wilfred Zaha just consistently running and finding himself in space, or being able to hold up maybe more so than the City defenders expected.
I think the quite simple explanation, which probably isn't the full explanation, is that Man City was so much on the front foot and were going at Crystal Palace, so that when Zaha had that ball and was running at Laporte or any other defenders, it was on the break, so there's naturally a bit more space than if Man City were already defensively set up, right? So he was catching Man City in transition a lot of the time.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the other, do you want to talk more about Crystal Palace's goals before we get into what City couldn't do?
I mean, Schlupp was very nice getting his ball low and in the corner. Almost as good as Jadon Sancho getting that ball low and in the corner for Dortmund this past Friday.
I knew you'd get a reference in there. I knew you'd get a mention in for Sancho.
We've got to talk about the Andros Townsend goal. This is Palace's second goal that a lot of people over here are talking about. We may as well shut down the goal of the season competition and give it to Andros Townsend now.
I mean, I'm one of those people.
Oh, yeah.
I absolutely think that's goal of the season. When I showed my wife this, I was saying it's going to be in the Puskás conversation for best goal of the year.
Yeah.
Because it is technically perfect. It's also because it comes about from like City's kind of chaos. I think it's Bernardo Silva and Gundogan are both kind of uncertain who's clearing it. Eventually, I think it's Gundogan who gets a header to it, but it's a weak header. It's the type of header that Daryl hates when it comes to defensive headers.
It starts with a bad John Stones header, ironically. He's sort of running backwards and just pops it straight up in the air rather than clears it. So he causes the problem that then Gundogan and Silva can't solve.
Yeah. And then from there, it's 29 or 30 yards out is the first time strike from Andros Townsend. I know in the match of the day, Ian Wright and Alan Shearer were both just mesmerized by the technical proficiency of the hit.
I was a little frustrated. Well. I was frustrated that they kept saying it's technically perfect and then just didn't explain what that means.
Yep. I mean, I think it's because it was something that Roy Hodgson hit upon, was that when you put yourself in the position to be able to have perfect technique, which is, I think, getting at the heart of it, which is that Andros Townsend adjusts his body so that then when he goes to meet that ball, he's not sort of reacting to it. He is attacking the ball almost.
Yes.
And then to hit it the way he does, but to be maybe a little bit more in depth, to get his hips sort of ending up facing down. So even the ball is rising when it hits the back of the net, it is still, for how hard he hits it, I think it ends up being close to 70 miles an hour is how fast that ball is traveling when it goes in. That to keep it still on frame is what they're talking about when they say how technically sound it was.
It also just struck me as a very nice posture. You know what I mean? Yep. His back was straight and all that sort of stuff, which I guess goes to what you were saying about he's not leaning backwards, leaning forwards, leaning left, leaning right. He's already chosen the perfect position to be in to strike that ball.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But he still hits it sort of not quite true with the laces, but slightly to the right of the laces. So if you watch it, as soon as it leaves his foot, it has that weird sort of backspin and then slides off to the side. And it's just because, again, that's still how well he hit it, that he strikes it true. So it doesn't kind of just jar off into the stands. But it's got enough spin that it's never getting saved. And it's a wonderful, wonderful strike that I loved very much.
The final thing I want to highlight about this is just why he's able to have all that space to hit it in the first place. We talked about maybe the bad clearances, but I often think it's quite important to have a good striker of the ball sitting outside of the area when you serve crosses in, as Palace did on free kicks or even on corners, right? If you're just crossing the ball into a box with loads and loads of players in there, there's a very good chance it just pops out to the top of the area. So I think it's really important to have someone who's capable of like slashing it straight back at the keeper, sitting there waiting. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that's all they drill that up. I'm sure he does that every single practice session, just hits that exact ball.
I look forward to his next attempt.
I don't think Man City do, but yeah, I'm with you.
Are you ready to talk a little Man City?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, why could they not pull this back? Because second half, it seemed like a lot of Man City attacking. They did get that De Bruyne goal, but not enough to get any points out of this game at all.
Yeah, so the cliche response has been what that City were basically chasing and that they're not used to chasing. And so once that starts happening, you start kind of dealing with a lot of the common problems of trying to win a game back, which is you're maybe not quite as focused. You're a little bit more desperate. You're maybe a little bit more direct than you would usually be. And going back to the Liverpool conversation, you lose a little bit of that belief in the improvisation that as it continues to not work, as you continue to not score, you start to maybe deviate from that, like, oh, I'm sure somebody else is making that run, and now you're like, well, I'm just going to shoot because I don't know if somebody's making that run.
Yeah.
So I think there was part of it, but I don't want to take away anything from what Crystal Palace were doing because, and again, this was very well highlighted. If the Andros Townsend strike wasn't, then this was by the match of the day, gentlemen. That as City got more frustrated, they went more narrow and they started having all their players kind of come more central, and then you end up having 5 and 6 guys kind of lurking at the top of the box. But if you're Crystal Palace, that's basically what you want them to be doing. You want them crowded at the top of the box. If they shoot from distance, so be it. And it takes a wonder strike. And City didn't have it. They did have a wonder cross, as you alluded to earlier, but that didn't end up being enough.
If anything, the cross that goes in from De Bruyne is illustrative of how narrow and tight and how little space Crystal Palace had allowed Manchester City, because De Bruyne had to cross so close to the goalkeeper to even try and reach any players at that far post, and then gets kind of lucky that it goes in. You get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, because the thing is, if you do pull players out wide, then you start not allowing Crystal Palace to stay compact and narrow, right? You start stretching them out, and Man City never stretched them out, which I thought was really interesting because normally that's the first thing I think of when I think of a Guardiola team.
I mean, I would say the time that most stands out in my head of when City were finally able to stretch Palace a little bit and kind of get players running in directions that they didn't want to be running. I say finally, it was the 27th minute. It's the Gundogan goal. It's the opening goal for Man City. And it's a great ball, I believe, from Kyle Walker out wide. Yes. But it just drops in, and then you've got everybody having to transition backwards and sprint because they thought they had it locked down. Palace did. When you don't, then suddenly everyone's kind of scrambling. That allows space to open up, and that's why Gundogan is wide open in that box. It's just all of the movement and the stretching of Crystal Palace. It leads to opportunities for Man City, but that felt like one of the only times they really were able to get that done.
All right, so Man City are now 4 points behind Liverpool in second place. We really do have a title race on our hands. It's very exciting, and it's going to shake out over the festive period. And City's fixtures are away to Leicester, who just beat Chelsea, away to Southampton, who suddenly look very, very good under Ralph Hasenhüttl. He's got Nathan Redmond firing on all cylinders. And then at home to Liverpool on January 3rd. That is the game to watch.
It is the game to watch. So, as you said, it's Liverpool 48, Man City 44. One quick note I wanted to make is that Tottenham are sneakily in there.
They are, aren't they?
It'll take some doing, but they're on 42 points. So they're 2 points behind City, 6 points behind Liverpool. But I watched their game against Everton, and it was...
I'm glad you did, because I did not. So, yeah, thank you for watching that.
Of course. I did it for you, Daryl. I did it for you. And it was a strange, like, the best explanation I can give for this game was Son's opener for Tottenham, which was like Pickford. I forget who Pickford runs into. It might have been Kurt Zouma. And then Son is able to run onto the ball, but he's like maybe 2 yards and like 20 yards, or not 20 yards, but like 2 yards from the end line and a good 15 yards from goal, and still hits an inch perfect ball back across goal into the far side netting. It's an open goal, but it's so technically well done, but it's also calamitous play from Everton. And that felt like the game from start to finish for Tottenham was kind of ruthless in taking advantage of Everton's vulnerabilities, and it looked for all the world like a team that were very much geared themselves to keep pushing for certainly top four, but maybe just maybe the title as well.
I mean, yeah, they're not too far away, right? So if they're 2 points behind City, they're 6 points behind Liverpool. So it's never impossible.
It is never impossible. And I imagine if you're a Tottenham fan, you want them challenging right until the final day, not just for your own enthusiasm and enjoyment and the possibility of being a champion, but because if you're Tottenham and say maybe the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer experiment fails and United finish 6th or 7th or 8th, but Tottenham finish 1st or 2nd, maybe Mauricio Pochettino looks at that and thinks, this one seems like it's more likely to end up in a title than maybe that other one. I'm staying put.
Did you see the Pochettino post-match interview?
No.
So it was his 26th anniversary with his wife, and he had not gotten her a present. Yeah. And he's now claiming that the 2-6 result at Goodison Park is the 26th anniversary present.
Yeah, that's not a great idea. That's a bad idea.
It's not a great idea. I've forgotten who it was that was interviewing him, but they said, you should probably get another present on the way home.
I think that is a solid piece of advice. Another solid piece of advice, maybe he wants to get her some tickets to an event or a concert or something like that. And he can
Any
do
event.
Any event. Today's sponsor, SeatGeek.
Thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring today's show. This is our last ad read, I believe, of 2018. SeatGeek is our final sponsor of 2018. It's very fitting because they've been with us for, I want to say, a year and a half now. They've been wonderful sponsors of the Total Soccer Show. SeatGeek is a ticket aggregator. You can open it as an app in your phone, like Taylor did earlier. You can click your way through. You can see the range of prices available for tickets for events. They'll tell you, using the traffic light system, green, orange and red, what's a good price, what's not such a good price. And with just a couple taps on your phone, you can buy tickets to any event. Taylor, what did you find when you searched through the SeatGeek offerings, the ticket offerings?
I found that in the surrounding area, there are no U.S. men's national team games in and around the Richmond, Virginia area. But when you broaden that search out, it turns out that you can find tickets to their game against Costa Rica on February 2nd at Avaya Stadium. Those tickets are available. There are a whole range to go for. It does feel like it's reflective of it being Greg Berhalter's first few games, the pricing that I saw. But definitely SeatGeek.
Meaning people are excited?
And also maybe the prices are slightly higher than you might expect for a January camp game that's being played in February. But still an exciting time to be a national team fan. Maybe the first exciting time in like over a year. So I think justification to go check out that game, and SeatGeek will help you get the best possible tickets for the best possible price.
And you can get $10 off if you use the promo code TSS. So you go to the settings tab, enter promo code TSS, 3 letters, and you'll get $10 off your first SeatGeek purchase. We know this works because lots of people have sent us screenshots of them getting the discount and the event that they're going to. We always appreciate it when people send us evidence of their SeatGeek use.
I mean, I certainly do, because it means that people are still using it. It means that the sponsor is still happy with the product.
And what is the SeatGeek motto, Taylor?
SeatGeek, life's an event. We've got the tickets.
Sure
and
do.
The way to find you a last-minute anniversary present if maybe you've made a public gaffe and need to correct that mistake.
Mr. Pochettino, if you're listening.
I'm sure he is.
Speaking of January camp, we didn't get to talk about it yet, but I listened to your interview with Bobby Warshaw, and I thought that was an excellent show. Bobby had some really good insights, especially as a way to look at that roster and a way to look at Berhalter call-ups. I know you know what I'm talking about. I'm sort of talking coding because I don't want to give away exactly what Bobby said. If people haven't listened, I really recommend please go back and listen to Taylor interviewing Bobby. There was one part of that interview that confused me though. You remember right at the start we were talking about the five-a-side game we played in Atlanta?
Yep.
And I think Bobby likened your game to, say, Clint Dempsey or Mixed Disc Rouge because you're always going for nutmegs and stuff like that.
I'll take Clint Dempsey, but sure.
You'll take Clint Dempsey. And you likened him to Tyler Adams because he was all over that field, running all over the place, right?
Yep.
And then I think Bobby said that when he plays, five-a-side with media people, he can look like Tyler Adams. But when he plays professionally, he looks like Darryl Grove. And it just felt inaccurate to me because I don't remember him winning MVP.
Did you win MVP in your mind?
I mean, I would have, I think, if I played in MLS. I probably would have been MVP every year, right?
Is this what happens? You go back to England and suddenly your estimations of the caliber of Major League Soccer collapses?
Yeah,
I see how it is.
I've got Liam Ridgewell disease.
Yeah, I think the other key point in what Bobby was saying is that against hungover media people, he can look like Tyler Adams.
All right. Speaking of Americans.
Yes. So we talked a little bit about the January camp. Let's talk about some people who will not be involved in the January camp, but will likely be involved in Berhalter's plans going forward.
Let's hope so. Let's talk about Josh Sargent, who got his second goal in only his third appearance for Werder Bremen. He scored in Werder Bremen's 3-2 loss to RB Leipzig, but it was a very enjoyable goal. It definitely got Twitter talking in a good way.
Yeah, I mean, I would say this performance as a whole should have Americans very excited. Werder Bremen fans too, even though it was a loss, but Americans especially, because I thought Josh Sargent was very, very good. And especially, I know you want to get to the goal, but the fact that
I want to talk about all of it. I think it's important to think about his entire game rather than just focus on the goal.
He comes on at the 66th minute with Bremen down 2-0. And then within, 1 minute, 2 minutes of coming on, he's involved or peripherally involved in the first goal for Bremen. Then he gets the second. So to come on and be involved and have that much of an impact, it, in my mind, means he's definitely going to keep getting minutes. Maybe as a sub, but that's fine because it's still him proving his way into the team and proving that he belongs within the team.
So let's talk about his game then. What did you see from him? Like, I'll get us started, for example, by saying that I saw him pressuring Leipzig defenders when they had the ball. Not always 100% successfully, but he definitely made life hard for them. But I also saw him chasing a lot of almost lost causes because Werder Bremen seemed to just play a lot of direct balls forward and just hope that Josh Sargent would either run in behind if the ball was good or challenge in the air if the ball was not so good.
Yes. I mean, I think he was all about energy. I mean, I think his
energy is the word,
his very last act of the game was like the 93rd minute. He chases somebody down and fouls them. It's the final action of the game. I think is like the kick is taken on the whistle goes. But again, that's representative of what he was being asked to do is make the other team uncomfortable, try to make things happen. But the thing that stood out to me as well was like we were talking about United and how when Man United would win the ball back against Cardiff, it was like playing the ball forward and you had a lot of direct runners trying to get into Cardiff's defensive area. And I would say with Josh Sargent for Werder Bremen in this game, for the goal, for example, he's making that run to the back post. He's rewarded. He gets the goal. But even for the first goal, the reason why I say he's involved is because he is making almost an identical run at the back post. It just ends up being that everybody is kind of collapsing to deal with the presumed ball right across the 6-yard box. And instead it's cut back. That's where the goal comes from. But it's still him sort of as soon as it's on, making very aggressive runs to get into the box to either score goals or facilitate goals. And so that kind of overall working very hard off the ball, winning the ball back on occasion, keeping the ball moving, doing good hold up, and getting a goal. It's why I found myself coming away from this game wanting to watch a lot more Werder Bremen.
So let's talk about the actual goal. So they lost in the end 3-2, but this was the equaliser. This made it 2-2. It starts with a long-ish ball that Sargent meets with his chest and essentially holds it up. I think he's against Willy Orban, who's one of the Leipzig centre-backs. And Sargent, goes up against some adults and is perfectly fine shielding that ball and laying it off.
Yeah, and it was interesting to me because I think a minute or two before he'd had one on the opposite side of the field and he chests it down and I think it just goes out of bounds.
Yes, I saw that too.
It's such a heavy touch, and you contrast that. Glad we were both reviewing Y Scout, I'm guessing. But in this sequence,
no, I traveled to Germany.
Oh, did you? Oh, that was good of you. Did you hang out with Greg Berhalter?
Yeah, I directed him. All his viewings were Darryl approved.
Okay, that's good. I appreciate that. I appreciate that effort from you. But yeah, so in this sequence, to be able to bring it down under pressure with a defender on the back, and then in a tight space, still find a teammate. I think he ends up playing it wide to Augustinsson. I might be wrong on that one. But either way, he holds it up, waits for his teammates to get into more supportive attacking positions, lays it off, and then continues his run after the ball is gone.
Yeah, I rewatched this a few times and focused on his run after he laid it off. Because I think it's Augustinsson. He immediately plays like a first-time, almost cross-field ball into the path of Osaka, right? Who eventually gets the assist by laying it back to Josh Sargent. But what Sargent does, I think he runs off the field to get on the blind side of Ibrahim Konate, who I think's the other Leipzig centre-back. So he does like a big long run around him to get behind him, and then sprints like from the left side straight into the box. And you can see there's basically no one there when he receives that second pass, right?
Yep. Yeah, and then the commentator did a good job of pointing this one out, that when he receives that pass, I think for an 18-year-old or for a young player to be in that position where, suddenly it feels like it's on, I should be finishing this goal. How many times have we seen them take it like too fast or try to take it with the opposite foot and it ends up being shot right at the goalkeeper or put over? And here he lets it come across his body. And this is where the commentator just kept being like, he opens up the whole goal. He opens up the whole goal. But he really does. That when it rolls across, he's now putting it on his dominant foot and he can kind of control wherever he wants it to go. But he's also pulled the goalkeeper out more so that I think when he hits it, the goalkeeper is already kind of diving at him. So then again, it's the goalkeeper not really in control anymore, and it's Sargent able to evaluate, pick a spot, gets a favorable ting off the post, but I don't care because it ends up in the back of the net.
So we'll keep an eye on Werder Bremen to see. I'm assuming Sargent will keep making the bench and will keep being a sort of, in case of emergency, bring on Josh Sargent situation.
But if he keeps up the dynamism and like attacking intent, maybe we see him get a start here and there. Either way, it's an exciting time for him. And I would say, transitioning us over to, it's a very exciting time for John Brooks, at least from what I could tell in his game for Wolfsburg this weekend.
Yeah, so Wolfsburg, correct me if I'm wrong, Wolfsburg won 3-2. They beat Augsburg. And John Brooks got himself an assist that could have been a goal, maybe, if a certain someone had just let it run, but also had a really good defensive performance.
He did. Which is a strange thing to say about a team that conceded 2 goals, but I was really impressed by his just like presence in the back. Not quite on the Virgil van Dijk level, obviously, because John Brooks did not cost £75 million or whatever it was, but just the way he was able to like keep the ball moving. He was calm on the ball though. So there's the one where he like cuts it past the defender who's sliding in and then just has all the space in the world then to pick his head up, find another pass.
I enjoyed that.
But then there were the moments where he went direct down the line. And so it just felt like his distribution was excellent, and then his willingness to be aggressive and step into midfield to kind of break up counterattacks or put a player under pressure because no one else could. It felt like he was reading the game really, really, really well. And again, that had me excited for what he can do when he gets called into the camp under Berhalter.
There were still a couple of passes that were more ambitious than they were accurate. So there were a couple of giveaways out of the back. But I think if you're a centre-back looking to, make big plays out of the back, you're always going to have one or two of those, right? Like even Fabinho in midfield for Liverpool had one against Wolves. So I'm willing to sort of just like accept that as part of the package because I think it's worth the trade-off.
All right. Then I'm good with that. I'm glad that you're willing to accept. So John Brooks, Darryl will still accept you. Are you as accepting of Atlanta United's new hire?
Yeah, I've definitely come around to thinking it's good. I think, like a lot of people, I had the initial thing of thinking Frank de Boer's not South American, and I just thought that was part of the Atlanta United identity and culture and style was to have a South American coach. But I think that may have been just really sort of cautious of me, just thinking you have to do what you've done before. And it seems more like, from what I've read, like quotes from Carlos Bocanegra, I read the Felipe Cardenas story on The Athletic. It's really about a style of play, right? And De Boer absolutely fits into that style of play and will just continue things and keep things moving forward. And it's not the South American players that they were able to sign in Atlanta. It's not about Tata Martino, right? It's about the connections that the club has. So, I think for Atlanta United fans, I feel good about this.
I would agree with everything you said, with one little difference is that I think De Boer, if anything, like what we heard coming out of Atlanta's win in MLS Cup in 2018 is that like maybe with Jose Martinez, not Jose Martinez, excuse me, with
Miguel Almiron?
Thank you, Miguel Almiron moving on, that it felt like maybe Pity Martinez coming in, maybe Zico Barco, they're not quite as like fluid in how they want to attack, that they're not just going to turn and go at people. They want to like slow it down a little bit and pick their options and maybe have a bit more possession. That feels like what Frank de Boer wants to do, what he wanted to do at least at Crystal Palace, was have a more possession-oriented style of attack, and maybe that's part of how he was selling the front office. Is he wants to incorporate these players that you're spending a lot of money on. Barco, who became this sort of the human victory cigar, getting 10 minutes here at the end of the game. Yeah. Maybe he becomes a more pivotal player for Atlanta United under the tutelage of Frank de Boer. So that, again, had me excited to see what he brings to the current champions.
Yeah, and obviously people will point to what happened at Crystal Palace, which is that he did not win many games and he was fired quite early in the season. But I think it was just too big of a transition for Crystal Palace to become a Frank de Boer possession-heavy team, right? Whereas going into Atlanta, you've got it seems, a front office that are fully committed to the idea, which is, a tweak on what Tata was doing, but it's somewhat similar, right? And as you said, a playing staff, playing personnel that are the correct players to play that way, including when Pity Martinez arrives.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, so
the setup is right for De Boer to do what he wants to do, rather than trying to force his style on a system that maybe isn't ready for it.
Yeah, I think so, and I do think, looking at where he's had problems, Crystal Palace obviously, but I think Wilf Zaha came out and said we just didn't have the personnel to do what he wanted to do. Yeah. Inter Milan, I am less familiar with his time at Inter Milan, other than to say that it didn't go nearly as well. But again, it was not a lot of time trying to make wholesale changes to a club in the way that club plays, and I think it maybe didn't sit well with some of the front office. There are reasons to have doubts about Frank de Boer. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this is definitely going to be the best thing ever.
Yeah.
And coming into Major League Soccer, you have to adjust and change your plans and change the way you want to recruit players and how you want to play players and how many minutes you're giving them. But it still feels like it's got a lot of the boxes ticked for it being a smart hire. And then I can't remember if you've said this or not, but a good point in Felipe Cardenas' article is that he speaks fluent Spanish and English, which it's a massive, massive thing in keeping everybody happy and keeping Jose Martinez feeling mentored and taken care of.
Absolutely, yeah. Tell him to take those ski goggles off to start with. So one other thing I want to mention about Frank de Boer is his Ajax connection. So obviously his most successful spell as a coach was at Ajax, and also very famous Ajax player. He obviously has very strong ties to the Dutch team. And I don't really have a prediction. I just want to say that it's worth keeping an eye on whether or not Atlanta United and Ajax end up with some sort of relationship just based on Frank de Boer having been involved with one and now being involved with the other. And I'm thinking things like Sergino Dest on loan at Atlanta, for example, or young players like maybe eventually Joseph Martinez going and playing for Ajax in a big money move. So I wonder or George Bello going to Ajax in 4 or 5 years' time. And I'm just interested to see if that has any influence on what happens with Atlanta United.
All right. Well, all we can do is wait and see how preseason goes, and if Frank de Boer gets any result in his first 4 games, then it's already going better than it did in England.
First game I think is going to be DC United, right?
I have no idea.
Yeah, it's been rumoured that the first Atlanta's and DC's first game will be against each other.
Gotcha.
Final thing to mention before we move on to the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network. Taylor, did you know the Club World Cup happened?
I did not, but I know Sergio Ramos didn't like the way everything played out.
Right. No, he got booed, right? And we're not entirely sure why.
We're not.
I don't know. Maybe the Der Spiegel stories, maybe for what he did to Mohamed Salah. But either way, Real Madrid won the Club World Cup. They won 4-1 against Alanin in the final. Congratulations to them, I guess, but it really felt like this got no attention. Like, it didn't have my attention, which I feel weird about, but it is what it is.
I think because of what happened in the Copa Lib final, the way all that went down, and then the fact that Boca went out to Alain, that I think that really took away.
River went out to Alain, right?
Excuse me, yes. River, yeah. The way River went out maybe took away a lot of, or like what was remaining of the enthusiasm, a lot of which had already dipped after the way the Copa Lib final played out.
Yeah. I think that's it. But still, congratulations to Real Madrid. It's another trophy, isn't it?
Hooray!
All right, are you ready for the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network?
Let's do it.
So it's been at least a week, maybe more, since we last did it. So we've got some catching up to do, Taylor. So some of these are condensed, some of these are quick fire. So get ready. First up in the Scouting Network, Richie Garcia is scouting Emerson Hyndman, the 22-year-old American midfielder for Bournemouth, on loan in Scotland at Hibs. Richie says, in Emerson Hyndman's first game back from injury, he came on in the 45th minute for the Hibs and changed the game. Assistant coach Gary Parker said, Emerson played in the number 10 at first, got on the ball, found passes, he keeps it, he wants the ball all the time, it rubs off on the other players, his 1 and 2 touch passing. We missed Emerson, and Hibs won 1-0. So that's good news for Emerson Hyndman. That's
a pretty solid review overall. Yeah. Let's see what Chase Poole has in store for Gedson Fernandes, the 19-year-old Portuguese midfielder for Benfica. Gedson Fernandes' Champions League season is over as Benfica finished in third in Group E. He was the lone Benfica scorer in a 5-1 loss to Bayern. He completed a nice quick 1-2 with Jonas. Benfica will continue play in the UEFA Europa League.
Sam Creef is scouting Ezequiel Barco, the 19-year-old Argentinian attacker for Atlanta United, the aforementioned. Sam says Barco was called into the Argentina U20 camp, giving him a shot of making the Argentina squad for the Sudamericano Sub-20 tournament in Chile in January. The top 4 teams from the Sudamericano Sub-20 will qualify for the U20 World Cup.
All right. Go get it, Mr. Barco. Stay off of Twitter and text messaging your teammates. Jeff and Sam Huffman scouting Mukwele Akele, the 21-year-old American attacker for Villarreal B. Mukwele has started the Villarreal B's last 3 games and got an MLS assist with a nice diagonal ball into the space as part of a well-worked goal in the team's 3-1 win over Espanyol B. Mukwele is also a key player for the Villarreal U23s, who play in the season-long U23 Premier League International Cup. Mukwele scored the 7th in a 7-0 win over Liverpool B.
David Bell is scouting Diego Lainez, the 18-year-old left winger for Club America and Mexico. Matt Miazga knows who he is. David Bell says Diego Lainez started in both legs of the Liga MX final, which his team Club America won 2-0. Also, there are reports out of Mexico claiming Lainez is nearing a move to Ajax. The transfer fee for Lainez is rumoured to be the highest in Mexican history.
The other rumor I heard was that he wanted to go somewhere where Sergino Dest could not take him apart defensively. So there we go.
Except every day in training.
Except for every day in training. Alex Bush scouting Aaron Wan-Bissaka, the 21-year-old English right back for Crystal Palace. Wan-Bissaka got the assist on Mili Jovovic's goal in Palace's 1-0 win over Leicester. First Palace win without Zaha for about 2 years. And he also shut down Leroy Sané. Yes, he did in emphatic fashion in their 3-2 win over Man City.
I'm increasingly excited about AWB. And his Englishness and his right-backness. Manny Alcantara is scouting Junior Firpo, the 22-year-old left-back for Real Betis and Spain, mostly under-21s. Manny says Junior won a penalty versus Espanyol when he was fouled in the box, but also got injured while being fouled and is now out with a quad strain until 2019, which obviously not as bad as it sounds because it is now December 24th, 2018. Junior has many suitors interested in his services this January and a €50 million buyout clause. The Betis are reportedly listening to any offers above 40 million.
All right, Junior, get that money. I'm assuming he'll get some of that money at least.
He gets a cut. He doesn't get all of it.
Well, that's true. Zach Lippert scouting Izzy Brown, the 21-year-old English attacker on loan at Leeds from Chelsea. Izzy Brown is back on the field after recovering from his ACL tear. He played for the first time in 11 and a half months for Leeds U23s before being substituted with a tight hamstring. Uh-oh. Is he about to be set for another long spell on the side? Oh, no. Is he about to be set for another long spell on the sideline? All right, whatever. Puns are puns. Probably not. The club reported the tight hamstring as minor and not an issue.
But they reported it was a good opportunity for a pun on the Total Soccer Show. Anurag Anjaria is scouting...
It was an opportunity, that's for sure.
Anurag Anjaria is scouting Andrea Novakovic, the 22-year-old American striker on loan from Reading at Fortuna Sittard. Have you seen... You may have seen this video already, Taylor.
I have not.
Anurag says Novakovic made his first start since the injury that kept him out all of November. He grabbed an assist in a huge 2-0 upset on the road for Fortuna over third-place Feyenoord. Novakovic received the ball on a run into the box, sold a defender with a shot fake, and made a smart cutback for an unmarked Fortuna player to open the scoring. I've seen this. It's a really nice assist that big Andrea Novakovic gets.
Fortuna Sittard going to win the Eredivisie? Is that what I'm hearing?
Probably not this year.
Probably not this year. But if they do next year, hopefully he'll be involved and hopefully we'll be able to report on that. I did want to say, I know we had many other scouting reports. I know Daryl did some compiling this time around. We do not have time to get to them, but I do want to say we're definitely going to do the scouting report catch-up game in the new year.
Okay. Yeah. So what's our plan in the short term? I know that you are flying out to California on Christmas Day, right? So we're probably not gonna hear from you for a little while.
We're flying to a location. It is not California.
Oh, you're flying to a Oh, I know where it is. There's a new football team there. I've heard.
Or theoretically will be. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm going to be flying on the 27th. So I think there's going to be about a week between Christmas and New Year with no Total Soccer Show. So I just want to warn people that that is coming.
Yes. So you have been warned, but we'll be back in the new year. We'll probably definitely do some looks at some teams who could use some strengthening. We'll do some transfer conversations and lots to catch up on from the festive fixture period.
All right. So thank you to everybody for listening in 2018. And Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening. We hope you have happy holidays, and we'll talk to you again soon.